Hi, my name is Rick Chess, and I'm honored and happy to have this opportunity to offer you a short practice, actually, two short practices. Both of these practices have to do with working with language, but working with language in a contemplative way. Both of these practices are practices that are part of my kind of regular rotation. They come up every once in a while, and I found them very useful, heart opening, and they're practices that have opened me up to receiving many useful insights. And so the first practice is a practice that probably many of you have done before, or relate similar to things you've done before. And it's a practice that has a couple of different steps. The first of which is to turn to a text, some text that you might turn to for some wisdom, for some inspiration, for some guidance, for some sense of reconnection. And it can be a sacred text. It could also be a literary text. So in my case, often when I'm getting ready to do a practice in the morning, I might open the Jewish prayer book and like quickly read through one or two of the morning prayers from the Jewish liturgy, open to some word or phrase or verse that just calls out to me at that particular moment. And I've done the same practice, reading a poem. Maybe starting my day by reading a poem that is just drawn to one poet or another, and paying attention to same thing, a line or a part of a line, a word or a phrase that calls out to me. And once I find that little bit of language, I then close the text or put the screen aside. Um, and then I decide that I'm going to work with that text by repeating it quietly, internally, for a fixed period of time, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. Now, part of the practice for me is to notice when I'm repeating that as my sort of object of concentration, when I'm repeating the phrase, to notice when I begin to actively think about the language, the phrase, the words, interpreting them, applying them, deciding if I agree with them or disagree with them, because that happens. That's how we work with language. That's our customary way of engaging with language. And when I notice that I'm actively thinking about the words, I notice that and I let that go. And instead, I try to take a receptive attitude toward the language and allow the language to come to me rather than my going out to it, and allow the observations or insights to come to me rather than my going out seeking insights, understanding, ways of applying whatever the wisdom is of the particular phrase or verse that I'm repeating internally over and over again to my life to try to solve a problem or to help me with a certain situation, etc. So the important thing is to notice when you're actively thinking about the language, and that's okay. That's just going to happen, and then let that go. Um, and then just come back to the receptive mode of just saying the words quietly with an openness to allow whatever it is that's going to arise to arise. And so one phrase that I use from the morning prayers in Judaism is modeh ani, thankful am I. In fact, it comes from a little prayer that Jewish people can say on first awaking in the morning. Modeh ani lefanecha, ruach chai v'kayam, shehechazarta bi nishmati b'chemla, rabba amunatecha. Thankful am I to you gracious divine being who restored my soul to me, great is your trust in me as a being. But I just picked the first two words, modeh ani. That's the Hebrew, modeh ani, or you could say, thankful am I, thankful am I. And again, not like looking for, okay, what am I thankful for this morning? What was I thankful for yesterday? What might I be thankful for that's coming up later in my day? Rather to just keep saying those words quietly over and over again. Thankful am I, thankful am I, thankful am I, or I am thankful, or just thankful, thankful, thankful. And when your mind wanders, just bring it back to repeating the phrase, just to see what happens. If nothing else, it can work as a good object of concentration to stabilize your mind as you're beginning your day. So now I want to offer a slight variation on that kind of practice, a different way of working with language. In this case, maybe just a word, a single word. And this is more of a kind of a visualization practice. You know, words as written, they're shapes. And when you're writing out words by longhand, you're actually moving your hand in certain ways to create those shapes. And so for this other practice, um, I would invite us to choose a word to work with and visualize the shapes of the letters, not just when they're fixed in place. The letter P, for instance, the first letter for the word peace. But what are the movements of your hand? You know, you don't experience that much when you're doing it on the keyboard, but when you're writing by longhand, how do you have to move to create the line for like the spine of the letter P? And how do you have to move to create the semicircle or the three quarters of a circle to create that extension on the top of the letter P? Does the line move from below to above in creating the spine? Does the line move from the top of the spine and curve around to close that loop? And so for this particular practice, you could choose a word that calls out to you at a given moment. Let's just say peace right now for the sake of this practice. And you can visualize over and over again, creating the shapes of the letters and noticing as you do how you're moving up to down, from the top to the bottom, from above to below, around from the left to the right, from the top to the bottom, whether you're making curved shapes or straight lines. And notice whether you're creating letters that are open, that have an opening, so the letter C in peace. Just pay attention to it spatially, to that openness that is pointing, if you're like kind of writing in English from left to right, maybe to the west side or the west edge of the page. Or notice in a different word, let's say you're working with the word mountain. You know, notice that letter M, right? And that letter M that has those peaks in it, and it's open to what's below as it rests on the line. There's those two openings, and then there's these peaks that rise above. I mean, you don't have to be thinking about all this stuff. You should feel the space within and around the letters as you're visualizing making these shapes. And do that over and over again as a practice to see what arises. And now here's a variation on that. And this one, I'm going to actually give us a moment to kind of linger over step by step. And so I'm going to show you an image. So this is another kind of visualization practice using language. And you can do this with English, though the example I'm showing you is in Hebrew. And this is the four-letter name for God, called the Tetragrammaton. On the top, there's this letter, this little letter here on the top looks like a flame called a yud. And here is a letter that kind of looks like a house, maybe, some kind of structure. It's called a hay. It's got like a roof and a wall, another wall, and like a window or a door that's opening. And here is a letter that maybe looks like the spine. Looks like a little bit of a spine with maybe on the top a little yud coming off from the top of it. So a little flame, a spine with a flame coming off on the top. And that's the vav. And then here's the second hay the, that we saw above. So the yud, the hay, the vav, and the hay. And they're stacked on top of one another. This is not how they're customarily written. They're usually Hebrew's written from left to right. And so for this exercise, and even if you don't know Hebrew, you could do this. You can visualize each of these letters in an embodied way. So you could visualize this yud coming right off the crown of the head as it rises like a little flame, like a little flickering flame or an eternal light coming right off the crown of the head. And look at it. Now internalize it. See it in your mind's eye. And feel what it's like to feel that yud coming, touching the crown of your head and coming right off the crown of your head. And then for the hay, imagine that the top, the roof of this hay, is like going right across your shoulders, right across your shoulders. And the back spine, the back wall of this hay, that's your spine. Feel that letter hay. Feel the roof going right across the top of your shoulders and visualize and feel that hay as your spine. And then feel this front piece of it. See it again. Visualize it. Internalize it. Feeling it going up the front of your torso with an opening in your chest where the heart is. So you're embodying that hay. And then moving downward to the vav and feeling the upright portion of the vav also as the spine. And feel the energy of that vav moving from the base of your spine all the way to the top of your spine, and then radiating from the top of your spine up through your shoulders, through the top, through the roof of that hay, like a letter H, and then into that yud that's rising from the crown of your head upward toward the sky like a flame. So feeling that vav, the energy of the vav coming from the base of the spine up through the roof, through the shoulders, and then all the way out through the crown, through the yud, hey, vav. And now sink down further into your body with that final hey, and feel the top of that hay going across your waist. And then the back wall of that hay extending from the base of your spine deep into the earth. And feel the openness around your pelvis where you're sitting, touching the floor. And then that front part of the hay also rising up from the earth, creating a little opening just below your waist. And that image of the yud, the hay, the vav, and the hay it contains you. You are contained in it, in the Hey, the Vav, the Hey, and the Yud, ascending from the earth up through the spine, the back, and then the shoulders, and out through the crown of the head. You're held, supported, protected by these four letters. You live within these four letters. Whatever you imagine or understand as a kind of transcendent being experience, it's right here in your body. You're living within it. The Hey, the Vav, the Hey, and the Yud. And may you live and walk and go through your day knowing that you are an embodiment of a spirit of love, of compassion, of justice, of healing. Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey, love, justice, compassion, healing. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for the practice.